Standing silent for thousands of years, its massive stones piercing the horizon like the bones of some forgotten giant, Stonehenge has never stopped whispering its riddles to those who listen. Picture this, the first light of dawn creeping over the Salisbury Plain, casting long shadows from those towering slabs, each one weighing as much as 50 cars. Who dragged them here, how, and why? For centuries, this ancient circle has defied explanation, sparking theories so wild, so provocative, they blur the line between history and science fiction. Today, we're unraveling 25 of the most mind-bending ideas ever proposed about Stonehenge, from its possible role as a prehistoric astronomical calculator to claims it might have been a landing site for beings not of this world. Imagine living 4,000 years ago, standing where those stones now stand, watching the sun align perfectly between the pillars on the summer solstice. Was this a temple to the gods, a colossal calendar etched into the earth, or something even stranger? The truth is, every answer we think we have only leads to deeper questions. Some researchers believe the bluestones, hauled over 150 miles from Wales, held healing properties, making Stonehenge a Neolithic hospital. Others argue it was a place of the dead, a bridge between worlds. And then there are those who look at the precision of its alignment with the stars and ask, could ancient humans really have built this without help? What if I told you there's a theory that Stonehenge isn't just a monument but a message, a beacon perhaps, or even a warning? As we journey through these 25 astonishing ideas, you'll encounter forgotten legends, cutting-edge archaeology, and whispers of civilizations far more advanced than we ever imagined. Whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or just wildly curious, one thing's certain: by the end, you'll never look at those ancient stones the same way again. So let's begin where the mystery does, with the very first stone raised toward the sky, and the secrets it's kept for millennia. The very stones of Stonehenge seem to whisper secrets of the cosmos. One of the most compelling theories suggests this wasn't just a sacred site, it was a precision-engineered astronomical calculator, carved by hands that understood the heavens far better than we've given them credit for. Picture the summer solstice, when dawn's first light slices through the monument's heart, striking the heel stone with such perfect alignment it could never be coincidence. This wasn't just ritual, it was science. Ancient observers would have watched in awe as the sun, like a golden key, unlocked the same celestial doorway year after year, marking time with unshakable accuracy. But the genius doesn't stop there. Those mysterious Aubrey holes, the circular pits dotting the inner perimeter, might have been more than ritual markers. Some researchers believe they functioned like a Neolithic eclipse predictor, a celestial calendar tracking the moon's 18.6-year cycle. Imagine priests or astronomers moving stones between these holes, counting the passage of seasons and predicting lunar eclipses with startling precision. The ancients didn't just watch the sky, they decoded its rhythms, turning Stonehenge into a stone and chalk supercomputer. And then there's the winter solstice alignment, where the setting sun pours between the towering trilithons, framing the sunset like a divine spotlight. This wasn't a single moment of observation but a sophisticated system, a dual-axis calendar marking both the rebirth of summer and the retreat into winter's darkness. The builders didn't just honor the sun, they mapped its journey, embedding an entire cosmology into the landscape. Could these alignments be accidental? The odds are astronomical. The precision required to align massive stones with celestial events without modern tools or written records suggests a depth of knowledge that rewrites our understanding of prehistoric societies. Stonehenge wasn't merely a place of worship, it was a bridge between earth and sky, a testament to humanity's timeless quest to measure the immeasurable. Now let's shift our gaze from the stars to something far more human. The idea that Stonehenge wasn't just about celestial wonders but about something deeply personal, healing. Among the towering sarcens, there's a quieter mystery: the presence of bluestones, smaller but no less significant, brought all the way from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. Why would ancient people haul these massive stones across rivers, valleys, and forests? One compelling answer lies in the bluestones themselves. When struck, they produce a resonant, almost musical chime, and some believe they were thought to hold healing powers. Archaeologists have uncovered skeletal remains near Stonehenge bearing signs of severe injury and illness: fractured bones, infections, even evidence of primitive surgeries. But here's the fascinating part: many of these individuals weren't locals. Isotope analysis of their teeth reveals they traveled from as far away as modern-day Switzerland, suggesting Stonehenge might have been a Neolithic Lourdes, a sacred destination where the sick and suffering journeyed in hope of a cure. Picture the scene: pilgrims arriving after weeks of travel, guided by priests or shamans who interpreted the stone's vibrations as divine energy. Some researchers believe water played a key role, that the bluestones were placed in a circle where groundwater pooled, turning the site into a kind of prehistoric healing spring. Rituals might have involved touching the stones, drinking blessed water, or lying beneath the aligned arches during solstice sunrises, believing the celestial light carried restorative power. Artifacts found nearby deepen the mystery: carved talismans, offerings of animal bones, even the remains of medicinal plants. One reconstruction suggests a ritual where circles of the sick were led in procession, chanting or drumming to amplify the stone's supposed energy. Others speculate that the bluestones were ground into powder, consumed as a healing elixir. But was it all just faith, or was there something tangible at work? Modern experiments show that certain bluestones contain high levels of copper and zinc, elements known for their antibacterial properties. Whether through science or belief, something drew the desperate and the broken to this place, leaving behind echoes of their hopes in the bones and relics buried among the stones. If this theory holds true, then Stonehenge wasn't just a monument to the heavens. It was a sanctuary for the hurting, a place where suffering met mystery beneath the ancient sky. The image of robed druids chanting beneath Stonehenge's arches is burned into popular culture, but here's the twist: it's pure historical fiction. While Victorian paintings and modern pagan gatherings love to link the monument to these Celtic priests, the timeline simply doesn't add up. Stonehenge's main construction phases ended around 2500 BCE, while the earliest evidence of Druid practices in Britain dates to no earlier than 500 BCE. That's a staggering 2,000-year gap, like crediting Shakespeare's plays to a smartphone app developer. So how did this myth take root? Blame 18th century Romanticism. When antiquarians like William Stukeley began studying Stonehenge in the 1700s, they were desperate to connect Britain's mysterious past to something familiar. Stukeley, fascinated by Druids whom he imagined as noble philosopher priests, superimposed their rituals onto the stones, ignoring the inconvenient truth that the monument had already been ancient by the time Druids existed. The idea stuck, fueled by Victorian-era pageants where actors in faux Druid garb performed elaborate ceremonies among the stone's spectacles, more about national pride than archaeology. The reality of Stonehenge's builders is far more alien and fascinating. These were Neolithic farmers, not Celtic mystics, who hauled 25-ton sarsen stones using sledges and ropes, not magic. Their world was one of communal labor, ancestral worship, and a deep, practical understanding of the landscape. Unlike the Druids, who left written records via Roman historians, Stonehenge's creators communicated through symbolism we're still deciphering. Carvings of daggers and axes on the stones, carefully arranged animal bones, and that precise astronomical alignment earlier civilizations wouldn't replicate for millennia. Modern reconstructions show the stark contrast. Picture Neolithic builders in simple leather tunics, lifting stones with wooden frames, their tools flint and muscle, versus the flowing white robes and golden sickles of Victorian Druid fantasies. Even the ceremonies differed. Druids practiced tree worship and human sacrifice according to Roman accounts, at least, while Stonehenge's original rituals likely revolved around solstice events, burial rites, and communal feasting. Does this mean modern Druids shouldn't celebrate at Stonehenge? Not at all. Their connection, though historically misplaced, is a meaningful revival, but understanding the truth shifts our perspective. The real builders weren't mystical forest sages. They were innovators who engineered a celestial monument so enduring, even 2 millennia later, new cultures would try to claim it. And that's the deeper irony. Stonehenge outlasted not just its creators, but every group that ever tried to rewrite its story. In the swirling mists of medieval legend, Stonehenge wasn't built, it was stolen. Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century chronicle spins a tale so vivid, it's hard not to picture the wizard Merlin commanding an army of giants to uproot a circle of mystical stones called the Giant's Dance from Ireland's Mount Killarrouse and magically transplant them to Salisbury Plain as a war memorial. The story claims they were healing stones brought by giants from Africa, and that Merlin used his arcane arts to disassemble and float them across the sea. It's a dazzling image, but like so much medieval history, it's a tapestry woven with equal parts fact and fantasy. The truth behind the legend lies in Wales, not Ireland. Modern geologists have traced Stonehenge's smaller bluestones to the Preseli Hills in Pembrokeshire, over 150 miles away. So how did Geoffrey get it so wrong? The answer might lie in ancient migrations. During the Neolithic era, cultures moved westward across Britain, carrying their traditions and possibly their stones with them. Geoffrey, writing thousands of years later, could have conflated fragmented oral histories of these journeys with Ireland's own megalithic sites like Newgrange, creating a hybrid myth that stuck. But here's where reality rivals fiction. The idea of transporting massive stones isn't entirely far-fetched. Experimental archaeologists have shown that Neolithic builders could have moved the bluestones using a combination of sledges, rollers, and even rafts along coastal routes. One theory suggests they might have exploited glacial erratic boulders deposited by Ice Age movements, but the precise matching of Stonehenge's bluestones to Preseli's quarries leaves little doubt. Humans moved them, whether by muscle, ingenuity, or both. Geoffrey's tale, though fanciful, reveals something profound. By attributing Stonehenge's construction to Merlin, he acknowledged what still baffles us today: the monument scale feels almost supernatural. Maybe that's why the legend endured. It offered an answer as grand as the mystery itself. Meanwhile, the real story of Neolithic engineers dragging 20-ton stones across rivers and ridges is no less epic. It just swaps magic for something equally remarkable: human determination etched into the landscape. Among the wildest whispers surrounding Stonehenge is the idea that its origins don't belong to humanity at all, but to visitors from the stars. Ancient astronaut theorists point to the monument's precision, its alignment with celestial events, and the sheer physical impossibility of moving 50-ton stones with primitive tools as evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. Some even claim the site sits atop powerful energy ley lines, acting as a cosmic landing pad or interstellar navigation beacon. The image is irresistible: glowing figures in otherworldly craft directing awestruck Neolithic humans like actors in some retro sci-fi film. Lasers slicing stones with impossible precision while primitive tribes look on in wonder. But let's separate speculation from science. While the idea of alien architects makes for thrilling book covers and late-night documentaries, archaeologists have demonstrated how Neolithic builders could have achieved these feats through sheer ingenuity. Experiments using wooden sledges, rope made from twisted plant fibers, and teams of laborers have successfully moved replica stones across rough terrain. The so-called stone rowing method, where teams rock a slab back and forth on wooden rollers, could explain how upright stones were positioned with surprising accuracy. Even the famous lintels balanced atop the uprights might have been raised using a simple system of earthen ramps and levers. That said, the energy field claims aren't entirely baseless, just misunderstood. Modern instruments have detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations around Stonehenge, but these are likely caused by underground water channels interacting with the site's geology, not alien technology. As for ley lines, these supposed pathways of cosmic energy were popularized in the 1920s by amateur archaeologists, more poetic fantasy than measurable phenomenon. Still, the alien theory persists because it speaks to a deeper truth. Stonehenge feels unnatural in its perfection. In a world where we've mapped the ocean floor and sent probes beyond our solar system, the idea that prehistoric people outsmarted us in megalithic engineering is almost as startling as little green men. Maybe that's why the ancient astronaut narrative endures not as science, but as mythology for the space age, a way to reconcile our awe with the humbling fact that humans 4,000 years ago might have been even cleverer than we thought. Close your eyes and picture the scene not with your eyes but with your ears. A circle of priests or shamans stands within Stonehenge at dawn, their voices rising in a low chant. But instead of dissipating into the open air, the sound swirls, trapped and amplified by the towering stones, bouncing between the hard surfaces until the very ground seems to hum. This isn't just speculation. Acoustic studies have revealed something extraordinary about Stonehenge's design. The arrangement of those massive slabs doesn't just mark celestial events, it transforms sound into something almost supernatural. Researchers using laser scans and sound wave simulations discovered that the stones act like a prehistoric amplifier. The hard surfaces of the sarcens reflect and magnify certain frequencies, particularly those in the range of the human voice and rhythmic drumming. One experiment placed microphones in a full-scale replica of Stonehenge and found that chants or clapping could create a cascading echo, a phenomenon now called the Stonehenge roar. It's as if the monument was engineered to turn whispers into thunder, turning rituals into immersive, almost otherworldly experiences. But the sonic magic doesn't stop there. The bluestones, those smaller, imported slabs from Wales, add another layer. Unlike the rough sarcens, bluestones have a crystalline structure that produces a metallic ring when struck. Imagine a ritual where priests tapped these stones with mallets, sending sharp, bell-like tones reverberating through the circle. Some archaeologists suggest these sounds might have been considered divine voices, messages from ancestors or gods channeled through the rocks. Even the monument's missing stones play a role. Simulations show that when Stonehenge was intact with all its lintels in place, the sound would have been even more controlled, creating a kind of Neolithic surround sound system. Chants or drum beats would have bounced between the stones, creating patterns so precise they could have guided dancers or marked phases of a ceremony. It's no wonder some theories propose that Stonehenge wasn't just a place to see, but a place to hear, where sound itself was a bridge to the sacred. So next time you see those silent stones, try listening instead of looking, because 4,000 years ago, this wasn't just a monument of earth and rock, it was an instrument tuned to the frequencies of human wonder. The wind carries more than just echoes at Stonehenge, it carries whispers of the dead. Hidden beneath the grass and scattered among the stones lie traces of over 50 cremated individuals, their ashes buried in the Aubrey holes that circle the monument. These weren't ordinary graves. The remains belonged to men, women, and even children, with analysis revealing they came from as far as Western Britain, suggesting Stonehenge was a revered resting place for generations of elite families. Forensic science paints a haunting portrait. Bones burned at extreme temperatures, some showing signs of prior injury or illness, all carefully placed in the earth with fragments of blue stone, as if the dead were being returned to the very material that made the site sacred. One burial stands out: the Amesbury archer, discovered just 2 miles from Stonehenge in a grave filled with gold hair ornaments, copper knives, and pottery. Isotope testing on his teeth told a story as dramatic as any legend. This man wasn't local. He'd walked to Britain from the Alpine foothills, his skeleton bearing the marks of a life shaped by violence, a missing kneecap, wounds that never fully healed. Yet he was buried with honor, his grave goods implying high status. Even more astonishing, DNA links him to modern Britons, proving his lineage survived millennia. Was he a pilgrim drawn to Stonehenge's power, a chieftain who came to die where the earth touched the heavens? Now imagine the rituals that might have unfolded here. Shadowy figures circle a pyre under a moonlit sky, chanting as smoke curls toward the trilithons. The dead are given to the flames, their ashes mixed with crushed bluestone powder, a symbolic return to the earth's bones. Recent reconstructions suggest mourners may have processed along the nearby avenue, carrying urns toward the stone circle as drums echoed between the pillars. Some theories propose the cremations were seasonal, tied to solstice events when the veil between worlds was thought to thin. Even the placement of the burials holds meaning. The cremations cluster near the monument's southeastern entrance, aligning with the winter solstice sunrise, a time associated with death and renewal in many ancient cultures. It's as if the living designed Stonehenge not just to honor the sky, but to guide the dead through it. Modern visitors walking among the stones today might not realize it, but they're treading on what was essentially a vast Neolithic cemetery, where every sunset poured through the arches like a gateway, and the remains of the ancestors became part of the land itself. What if Stonehenge wasn't just a place of silence and solemn rituals, but a Neolithic concert hall? Modern musicians have uncovered a secret hidden in the stones. Some of them sing. When struck with mallets, certain bluestones produce clear, resonant tones, almost like metallic bells. These aren't just random sounds, they're consistent musical notes, with some slabs ringing at frequencies that harmonize with one another. Archaeoacoustic researchers call them lithophones, ancient rock gongs, and experiments reveal that Stonehenge's builders might have deliberately chosen these stones for their sonic properties. Picture a moonlit ceremony where shamans or priests didn't just chant, but played the very earth as an instrument, their mallets tapping out rhythms that echoed across the plain. One team of musicians recorded these tones, blending them into a haunting soundscape. The stones emitted pitches close to modern musical scales, with some matching the keys of G and D notes still used in sacred music today. Even more intriguing, the acoustics of the full circle would have amplified these sounds, creating a natural amphitheater where every strike reverberated through the bones of the audience. It's possible these rock concerts weren't just entertainment, but a form of sonic magic, a way to commune with ancestors or summon divine forces through vibration. But here's the twist: not all the stones ring. Only the smaller bluestones, hauled from Wales, produce these crystalline tones, the massive sarsens silent when struck. This wasn't accidental. The builders might have curated the stones, placing the musical ones in precise positions to create a soundscape that shifted as participants moved through the circle. Imagine a ritual where initiates walked between the pillars, their path marked by changing tones, a literal journey through sound. Could this explain why the bluestones were worth transporting 150 miles? While their healing properties are often cited, their acoustic gifts suggest another layer of purpose. In cultures worldwide, from the ringing rocks of the Australian outback to the bronze bells of ancient China, sound has been a bridge to the sacred. Stonehenge's builders may have understood this instinctively, crafting not just a monument to the eyes but to the ears, a place where the earth itself could sing. Beneath Stonehenge's stoic surface lies a hidden talent, one that turns the ancient monument into something far more dynamic than a static calendar or temple. Recent studies reveal the sarsen stones possess a peculiar vibrational quality, resonating at low frequencies when subjected to seismic activity. Researchers simulating earthquake tremors discovered something startling. The arrangement of the stones acts like a prehistoric tuning fork, with underground water channels beneath the site amplifying subtle ground movements. Picture standing at the center of the circle during a minor tremor, feeling not just the shake of the earth, but hearing the stones themselves hum in response, a natural early warning system carved into the landscape. The science behind this is both elegant and eerie. The massive sarcens, anchored deep into the earth, vibrate at frequencies between 1 and 5 Hz, the same range as distant earthquakes. Computer models show how the monument's circular design creates a feedback loop, with tremors traveling through the water-saturated chalk bedrock and reverberating between the stones. Archaeologists point to ancient myths describing Stonehenge as a singing ground, where priests interpreted the vibrations as divine messages. Could these legends be fragmented memories of a real geological function? Maps of seismic activity in southern England add weight to the theory. The region lies atop a network of fault lines, with historical records showing detectable earthquakes every few decades. Neolithic builders might have noticed how certain rock formations echoed tremors more clearly, deliberately selecting and arranging stones to harness this phenomenon. Experiments with scaled-down replicas demonstrate how standing waves could form within the circle, creating pockets where vibrations felt stronger, potentially guiding ritual leaders to specific listening points. But the real genius lies in the water. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden streams and aquifers crisscrossing beneath Stonehenge, acting like natural amplifiers. When seismic waves pass through waterlogged chalk, their intensity increases, much like how a tuning fork rings clearer when placed on a wooden table. This wouldn't just predict quakes, it could pinpoint their direction. Imagine shamans noting which stones resonated first, interpreting patterns to warn neighboring settlements of impending danger. Critics argue this might be giving Neolithic builders too much credit, but consider this. Cultures worldwide have long linked unusual rock formations to earthquake lore. Japan's Naruto whirlpools were once thought to be the breath of underwater dragons stirring before tremors. If Stonehenge's architects recognized these subtle geological cues, they didn't just build a monument. They engineered a dialogue between earth and sky, where the stones translated the planet's whispers into something humans could hear. What if the stones of Stonehenge weren't just markers of celestial events but gateways to other times? Among the wilder theories swirling around this ancient monument is the idea that it functions as a time travel portal, harnessing invisible energy lines or cosmic vortices to bend the very fabric of reality. Proponents point to the site's placement along so-called ley lines, hypothetical alignments of ancient sites said to channel Earth energies, and claim the concentric circles act as a kind of Neolithic stargate. Picture this: a traveler steps into the center at dawn on the solstice, the stones humming with a frequency just beyond human hearing, and suddenly the air shimmers like a heat mirage. When the light fades, they're no longer in 21st century Wiltshire, but standing shoulder to shoulder with the monument's builders, watching as the final lintel is hauled into place. Of course, mainstream archaeologists roll their eyes at this. To them, the ley lines beloved by fringe theorists are little more than imaginative connect the dots, an accidental patterning of prehistoric sites that ignores the practical reasons ancient people chose high ground or water sources. Instead, they see Stonehenge's pathways, like the ceremonial avenue leading to the River Avon, as processional routes for funeral rites or solstice pilgrimages. Laser surveys even reveal where patterns in the grass where generations of feet wore down the earth in repetitive ritual circuits. But here's the twist: even the driest scientific explanations can't entirely dismiss the uncanny sensations visitors report. Dizziness, disorientation, a prickling sense of being watched phenomena often chalked up to infrasound vibrations or the sheer psychological weight of standing in a 4,000-year-old sacred space. Now let's lean into the fun. Imagine those sensations dialed up to 11, fueled by something even more mind-bending than Earth energies, psychedelics. Recent studies of Neolithic burial sites across Europe reveal traces of hallucinogenic plants like henbane and deadly nightshade substances known to warp perception and induce out-of-body experiences. What if Stonehenge's ceremonies included ritual ingestion of these compounds, turning the stones into a kaleidoscopic theater of visions? The concentric circles might pulse and breathe, the lintels stretching into infinity like a recursive dream. The winter solstice sunset wouldn't just mark the year's darkest night, it could tear open a portal to the spirit world, with participants convinced they'd crossed into another dimension. Science may scoff at time travel, but the human brain is its own kind of portal. Whether through ley lines, infrasound, or psychoactive plants, Stonehenge undeniably alters perception. Maybe that's the real magic, not bending time, but bending minds then and now. What if the bluestones of Stonehenge weren't just ritual objects but a prehistoric hard drive encoded with the DNA of an entire people? It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi novel, but some fringe theorists argue exactly that, claiming these ancient slabs functioned as a biological archive. The idea stems from a peculiar blend of pseudoscience and genuine mystery. Certain alternative researchers point to the bluestone's unique composition, rich in rare minerals like dolerite and foliated rhyolite, suggesting they could, under the right conditions, act as natural data storage. Think of it like Neolithic cloud storage, where genetic blueprints weren't uploaded to servers, but literally etched into the crystalline structure of the stones themselves. The theory leans heavily on speculative concepts like crystal memory, the idea that certain minerals can retain molecular information under extreme pressure or electromagnetic fields. Modern experiments have shown that quartz crystals can store data in microscopic defects, but scaling this up to complex biological data, let alone ancient human DNA, is a stretch even for cutting-edge tech. Yet proponents point to oddities: the bluestone's precise placement, their alleged healing properties, and the fact that Neolithic builders went to extraordinary lengths to transport them. Could they have believed these stones were more than tools or symbols, but living libraries safeguarding the essence of their ancestors? Skeptics, of course, dismantle the idea with simple science. DNA degrades over centuries, let alone millennia, and no known natural process can encode genetic material into rock. But the theory's persistence reveals something fascinating about how we project modern anxieties onto the past. In an age of genetic testing and ancestry databases, the notion of Stonehenge as a prehistoric 23andMe hub resonates precisely because it mirrors our own obsession with preservation. Then there's the folklore angle. Welsh legends speak of the Preseli bluestones as singing rocks with prophetic powers, stones that remembered the voices of those who touched them. While poetic, it's a far cry from genetic storage. Still, the overlap between ancient myth and modern pseudoscience is telling. Both grapple with the same question: how do we make the impermanent permanent? Whether through myth or wild speculation, humans have always sought ways to outwit oblivion. Stonehenge, with its silent stones, invites us to project our wildest answers onto its weathered surface. So while the DNA bank theory crumbles under scrutiny, it leaves behind a shimmering residue of wonder. After all, in a way, Stonehenge does preserve its builders' legacy, not in crystal lattices, but in the unshakable mark they left on the landscape. 4,000 years later, we're still decoding their message, one improbable hypothesis at a time. Maybe that's the real magic, not what the stones supposedly hold, but what they inspire us to imagine. Among Stonehenge's many mysteries, the 4 so-called station stones often get overlooked, but these unassuming markers might hide the monument's most sophisticated secret. Unlike the towering sarcens or the imported bluestones, these smaller stones form a precise rectangle around the main circle, their positions so mathematically deliberate they could have functioned as a prehistoric eclipse calculator. Picture this: every 18.6 years, the moon reaches its extreme northern and southern positions in the sky, a cycle known as the lunar standstill. When this celestial dance aligns just right with the sun's path, shadows cast by the station stones would have created a living map of impending eclipses, turning the entire site into a colossal early warning system. The geometry is startlingly precise. The rectangle's long sides point to the moon's most northerly rising position, while the short sides target its southern extreme. Neolithic skywatchers could have tracked the moon's movement against these stone sites, noticing when it veered into eclipse-triggering alignment. Modern computer simulations show something extraordinary. When the moon grazes the rectangle's corners during a standstill year, solar eclipses tend to follow within months. It's as if the builders encoded a celestial cheat sheet into the landscape, using nothing but carefully placed rocks and generations of observational wisdom. But here's the real stroke of genius, the 19-year Metonic cycle. Ancient astronomers from Babylon to China recognized that lunar and solar calendars realign every 19 years, meaning eclipses often repeat on similar dates across this span. Stonehenge's designers seem to have grasped this too. The Aubrey holes, those enigmatic pits encircling the monument, number 56. A figure that's not just divisible by 19, but that also tracks 3 full Metonic cycles with eerie accuracy. Move a marker between these holes year by year, and you'd have a Neolithic pocket watch for celestial events, predicting not just eclipses, but the moon's entire rhythmic dance. Now imagine the moment of revelation for these ancient astronomers. As the moon slides into alignment with the station stones, priests scrutinize the shadows, recognizing the pattern. Drums might sound a warning not of doom, but of a sacred window when the sun and moon briefly merge. Unlike later cultures that feared eclipses as omens, Stonehenge's architects may have seen them as divine appointments, moments when the ordinary rules of the sky bent to reveal deeper truths. The stones didn't just predict these events, they framed them, turning cosmic chaos into choreography. While modern telescopes and algorithms have replaced stone rectangles, the principle remains the same: humans still look up, still measure, still seek patterns in the heavens. Stonehenge's true legacy isn't just in its stones, but in the audacious idea that even the grandest celestial events could be marked, measured, and maybe even understood. Far from being just a sacred temple or celestial calculator, Stonehenge may have served as something surprisingly practical, a bustling marketplace where the Bronze Age's most valuable goods changed hands. Picture the scene: traders from as far as the Mediterranean and Scandinavia converging on the Salisbury Plain, their pack animals laden with exotic wares. The evidence lies in the soil copper daggers from Ireland, amber beads from the Baltic, even gold ornaments crafted with techniques originating in ancient Greece. These weren't casual trinkets, but high-status commodities that hint at a thriving trade network centered around the stones. Take the Boscombe Bowmen, a group of 7 individuals buried just 2 miles from Stonehenge with quivers full of distinctive flint arrows. Isotope analysis of their teeth revealed something astonishing. They weren't locals, but likely originated from Wales or Brittany. Even more telling, their grave goods included rare arsenic copper knives, a material smelted hundreds of miles away. These men weren't pilgrims, they were elite traders or mercenaries, their very presence proof that Stonehenge drew distant cultures into its economic orbit. Now imagine the barter unfolding under those towering trilithons. A Cornish merchant unrolls a hide packed with gleaming tin ingots, the essential ingredient for bronze, while a Mycenaean sailor offers deep blue faience beads from Egypt in exchange. Nearby, a northern hunter displays pelts of Arctic fox, his arms heavy with amber pendants that catch the solstice light like frozen honey. The stones themselves might have acted as neutral ground, their sacred status ensuring fair dealings under the watchful eyes of priest overseers. But why here? The answer lies in geography. Stonehenge sits at the intersection of ancient trackways, including the Harroway, Britain's oldest known road, which linked the salt marshes of East Anglia to the tin-rich southwest. Seasonal gatherings timed to solstices would have doubled as trade fairs, where rituals and commerce intertwined. Recent excavations uncovered cattle bones with slaughter patterns suggesting massive feasts enough to feed thousands. This wasn't just a temple, it was a prehistoric Davos where alliances were forged over roasted meat and mead. The most tantalizing clues come from tiny, overlooked artifacts. Mediterranean-style glass beads unearthed near the Avon River match those found in Mycenaean tombs from the same era. A carved shale ring from Dorset bears spiral motifs identical to those in German burial sites. Even the bluestones might have been more than spiritual objects, they could have been trade items themselves, their rarity and transport adding value like a Bronze Age brand name. Critics argue there's no direct evidence of market stalls or currency exchange, but that misses the point. In pre-monetary societies, trade was ritualized, often occurring during religious festivals. The act of giving and receiving was sacred, binding parties in mutual obligation. Stonehenge, with its alignment to celestial cycles, would have been the perfect stage for such transactions, a place where the divine and the commercial weren't at odds but intertwined. Perhaps that's the monument's ultimate lesson. Human ingenuity doesn't compartmentalize. The same minds that calculated lunar cycles could broker deals across continents, turning a ring of stones into both a cosmic clock and a crossroads of civilization. Long before the Silk Road or the Mediterranean trade routes, there was Stonehenge where the earth met the sky and the world came to trade. Beneath the visible grandeur of Stonehenge's standing stones, some believe an invisible web of energy pulses through the earth, a hidden grid connecting sacred sites across the landscape. Dowser's practitioners who claim to detect subterranean energy with rods or pendulums have long insisted that Stonehenge sits at the crossroads of powerful ley lines, channels of earth energy that intersect beneath the monument like spiritual arteries. They describe sensations of tingling hands, spinning dowsing rods, and sudden temperature shifts when standing at specific points within the circle, particularly near the bluestones. Some even map these lines as precise pathways, suggesting the builders intentionally placed stones to harness or amplify this energy, turning the site into a Neolithic power station. Thermal imaging studies add fuel to the mystery. In certain conditions, infrared cameras have captured unusual heat patterns radiating from the stones, especially at dawn when the bluestones appear to emit warmth independent of sunlight exposure. Skeptics argue this could be due to moisture evaporation or mineral composition, but believers see it as proof of active energy flow, even more intriguing. Similar thermal anomalies appear at Overlook, Stonehenge's sister site 30 miles north, where the massive henge and stone circles also align with purported ley lines. The parallels are hard to ignore. Both monuments sit atop chalk aquifers, geological features that dowsers claim act as conductors for earth energy, yet the scientific community remains unconvinced. Geologists point out that so-called ley lines often align with natural fault zones or underground water channels, features that do generate measurable electromagnetic fields, but hardly supernatural ones. Experiments with controlled dowsing tests reveal a sobering truth. When participants don't know where these energy lines are supposed to be, their success rates plummet to chance levels. The tingling hands and spinning rods, likely the product of the ideomotor effect, subconscious muscle movements influenced by expectation. But here's where the debate gets fascinating. Even if ley lines are psychological rather than physical, their cultural impact is undeniable. Neolithic builders might have perceived these landscapes as charged with power, selecting sites where the earth felt alive. The alignment of Stonehenge, Overlook, and other henges along geological fault lines could reflect an intuitive understanding of the land's pulse, building where energy, real or imagined, converged. Modern pilgrims still report eerie sensations at these sites, proving that whatever the cause, the illusion or truth of these energies still lingers. So whether you trust dowsing rods or thermal cameras, one thing's clear: Stonehenge's power isn't just in its stones, but in the stories we weave beneath them. The real magic might not be the energy itself, but humanity's endless drive to find meaning in the unseen. The legend of King Arthur and his fabled sword Excalibur might seem like pure fantasy, but what if these tales were woven from threads of truth hidden within Stonehenge's stones? Medieval chroniclers like Geoffrey of Monmouth spun a tantalizing yarn that the wizard Merlin not only orchestrated Stonehenge's construction, but that Arthur himself was buried there, his mythical blade resting beside him. In the 1200s, the monk layman went further, claiming Excalibur was forged from stones near the monument, imbued with the same otherworldly power that drew ancient builders to this sacred ground. The connection runs deeper than folklore. Archaeologists have uncovered Bronze Age weapon hoards buried near Stonehenge, including daggers and swords ritually bent or broken, a practice mirroring Arthurian legends where Excalibur is returned to the lake after the king's death. One particularly striking find, a 2,000-year-old Roman-era statue of the god Mercury clutching a sword, discovered just miles from the monument, hinting at long-standing associations between the site and mystical blades. Even the name Excalibur might hold a clue. Some linguists trace it to the Welsh Caladfulch, meaning hard breach, possibly referencing the stone-hard durability of the bluestones themselves. But the real magic lies in the landscape. Modern augmented reality overlays reveal something uncanny. When you project Excalibur's legendary resting place, the Isle of Avalon, onto maps of the Salisbury Plain, it aligns eerily with the River Avon which flows past Stonehenge. Medieval texts describe Avalon as a place of healing, surrounded by water and mist, much like the waterlogged terrain around the monument. Even the timing fits. Arthur's supposed reign in the 5th or 6th century overlaps with the period when Stonehenge was still an active pilgrimage site, its original purpose fading into myth. Perhaps the most provocative clue comes from the stones themselves. Laser scans of Stonehenge's central altar stone show unusual wear patterns along one edge, grooves that could have been made by repeated sharpening of metal blades. Was this a ceremonial act linking the monument to sword lore, or did later visitors, steeped in Arthurian legend, ritually test weapons here, hoping to find the true Excalibur? The overlap of history and legend blurs at Stonehenge like nowhere else. Whether Arthur was real or symbolic, the fact that his story became entangled with these ancient stones speaks volumes. They weren't just monuments, they were mirrors reflecting the dreams and fears of every generation that encountered them. And in that reflection, Excalibur's gleam still flickers, not just as a sword in a stone, but as a symbol of the eternal mystery buried within the land itself. The stones of Stonehenge stand silent, but the earth beneath them tells a darker story. Among the most chilling theories about this ancient site is that it served as a stage for Neolithic blood sacrifice, where rituals of life and death played out under the solstice sun. Evidence comes from meticulous analysis of human remains found near the monument. Skull fragments with precise, deadly fractures, bones bearing cut marks consistent with flint knives, and a cluster of bodies showing signs of violent trauma. One particularly grim discovery near the ditch surrounding Stonehenge revealed the skeleton of a young man, his ribs notched by what appears to be a ceremonial blade. The angle of the wound suggests his heart was ritually removed, perhaps an offering to gods or ancestors. Then there's the enigmatic Cursus, a massive earthwork just north of Stonehenge, stretching nearly 2 miles across the landscape. Some archaeologists interpret this as a processional pathway for funeral rites, while others see something more sinister. Excavations along its length uncovered animal bones arranged in deliberate patterns, their marrow removed, a possible hint of sacrificial feasting. The most haunting find, a pit containing the remains of 7 red deer antlers, all placed tip down as if marking a gateway to the underworld. These antlers, dating to the same period as Stonehenge's construction, show signs of being violently wrenched from the animals' skulls, possibly during blood rituals meant to consecrate the land. But not all researchers agree. Opposing voices point to the overwhelming evidence of peaceful gatherings, the remains of communal feasts, healed fractures suggesting medical care, and the absence of mass graves typical of sacrifice sites. They argue that the so-called victims might have been revered ancestors, their bones carefully defleshed and preserved as part of ancestor veneration rather than violence. The cuts on the bones, they suggest, could originate from excarnation, a common Neolithic practice where bodies were exposed to the elements before burial, with flesh removed to speed decomposition. The debate reaches its peak over the Stonehenge archer, a skeleton discovered in the ditch with flint arrowheads embedded in his bones. Was he a sacrificial offering executed with arrows at close range, or a revered warrior given an honor burial, his wounds symbols of status rather than slaughter? Proponents of the sacrifice theory highlight how his body was positioned face down, arms bound behind his back, a posture seen in later ritual killings across Europe. Skeptics counter that the arrows might have been grave goods, placed with him as offerings, and that the binding could simply be the natural collapse of the skeleton over time. To step into this debate is to confront archaeology's greatest challenge. The same bones can tell wildly different stories. What one researcher sees as proof of sacred violence, another interprets as reverence for the dead. Perhaps the truth lies in between, that Stonehenge was a place where death held dual meaning, both feared and celebrated, where the line between sacrifice and sacrament blurred with each solstice sunrise. The stones don't judge, they simply watch, holding secrets written in marks too faint for any single theory to fully decipher. What if Stonehenge's true purpose wasn't just celestial or ceremonial, but cartographic? Some researchers propose that the monument functioned as a colossal prehistoric surveying tool, its stones acting as fixed sightlines to map and demarcate the surrounding landscape with astonishing precision. Picture standing at the center of the circle, peering through the gaps between the sarcens like the crosshairs of a Neolithic theodolite. Each alignment doesn't just point to the sun or moon it targets nearby burial mounds, ceremonial pathways, and even distant hills, creating an intricate web of geometric relationships etched into the earth. The evidence lies in the numbers. When archaeologists overlay Stonehenge's sightlines onto maps of the Salisbury Plain, they reveal a series of near-perfect equilateral triangles connecting the monument to barrows like Durrington Walls and the Cuckoo Stone. One particularly striking alignment runs from the heel stone through the center of the circle, extending precisely to the summit of Sidbury Hill, 7 miles northeast. Another links the winter solstice sunset axis to the Normanton Down Barrow Group, a cluster of elite burial mounds. These aren't random intersections, they form a repeating pattern of 60-degree angles, suggesting the builders worked with a standardized unit of measurement, possibly based on the length of the megalithic yard, a unit found in other Neolithic sites across Britain. But how would this work in practice? Imagine teams of surveyors using simple wooden frames or stretched ropes to maintain alignment as they moved across the landscape. By sighting from one stone to another, they could project straight lines over miles, marking territory boundaries or sacred pathways with marker posts. The process wouldn't just map space, it would encode meaning into the land itself, turning hills and rivers into points on a gigantic spiritual grid. Even today, walking these alignments triggers an eerie sensation, as if you're stepping into a hidden blueprint where every ridge and ditch was once part of a grand design. The most compelling proof comes from LiDAR scans, which reveal previously unnoticed earthworks perfectly aligned with Stonehenge's geometry. A newly discovered causeway near the River Avon runs at exactly 90 degrees to the monument's main axis, while a cluster of pits forms an arc matching the curvature of the Aubrey Hole circle half a mile away. These features aren't visible from ground level, but from above, they snap into focus like pieces of a vast puzzle. Critics argue these patterns could be coincidental. After all, with hundreds of ancient features dotting the landscape, some alignments are statistically inevitable. But the sheer density of geometric connections suggests otherwise. When you factor in the precision of the summer solstice alignment, accurate to within a fraction of a degree, it becomes harder to dismiss the idea that Stonehenge anchored a sophisticated territorial system. Perhaps the monument didn't just mark time, it measured space, turning the wild landscape into a sacred geometry that guided both the living and the dead. Think of it as prehistoric geocaching, where the coordinates weren't numbers but stones and stars. A traveler could navigate from the Cursus to the Avon using nothing but the glint of the sun bouncing off a distant menhir. The builders didn't just create a monument, they wove the entire region into a map of memory, where every alignment told a story, and every stone was a waypoint in a journey both physical and spiritual. Among the night sky's most recognizable patterns, Orion's belt gleams like a celestial marker, and some researchers believe Stonehenge's builders etched that same cosmic design into the earth. The idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. When you overlay star maps onto the monument's layout, something uncanny emerges. The positions of Stonehenge's keystones mirror the three stars of Orion's belt, with the nearby Avon River reflecting the Milky Way's shimmering band. The alignment isn't perfect, but neither is it random. Adjust for the gradual shift in Earth's axis over 4,000 years, and the match grows startlingly precise, as if the stones were frozen snapshots of a specific night sky preserved in chalk and sarsen. This cosmic mirroring isn't unique to Stonehenge. Across the ancient world, cultures anchored their sacred sites to the stars. Egypt's Great Pyramids at Giza align with Orion's belt in nearly the same configuration, their layout so precise it defies coincidence. But here's the twist. While the pyramids point to Orion, Stonehenge might have been built to invite it down. Imagine standing in the circle during the winter solstice, watching Orion rise above the heel stone. To Neolithic eyes, the constellations' sword could have appeared to pierce the monument's center, transforming the stones into a gateway where gods walked the earth. Archaeoastronomers have mapped even deeper connections. The four station stones form a rectangle matching the proportions of Orion's shoulders and feet, a pattern repeated in megalithic sites from Scotland to Turkey. And just as Orion's belt points to Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, Stonehenge's midsummer sunrise alignment targets the precise spot where Sirius would have risen 4 millennia ago. Was this intentional? The odds stack up. Orion held immense symbolic weight for ancient cultures, often associated with death, rebirth, and the journey of the soul. For a monument steeped in burial rituals, that stellar link would have been more than decorative, it was divine. Critics counter that star alignments are easy to project retroactively onto any ancient site. Yet the evidence goes beyond simple patterns. Carvings of daggers found on Stonehenge's stones bear a striking resemblance to Orion's outline, while excavation reports note that bluestone fragments were often placed in graves, perhaps as star-bound talismans. Even the legend of the Amesbury archer, the traveler buried near Stonehenge with gold-covered daggers, takes on new meaning if his grave goods weren't just status symbols but replicas of celestial weapons. The most compelling argument lies in the landscape itself. From Stonehenge's center, the winter solstice sun sets directly over the altar stone, but on the same night, Orion rises in perfect opposition, as if the builders encoded a dialogue between solar and stellar cycles. In this light, Stonehenge wasn't just a temple to the sun or moon, but to the entire cosmos, a place where earth and sky intertwined, and where the dead might ascend to join the eternal dance of the stars. Whether by design or divine inspiration, the stones still whisper that promise to those who look up. The internet loves a good giant story, tales of colossal skeletons unearthed near Stonehenge, their massive bones tucked beneath the very stones we've marveled at for centuries. Viral posts show photos of towering femurs and skulls twice the size of a modern human's, claiming archaeologists have hidden the truth about a lost race of giants who built the monument. It's a gripping image, ancient titans dragging 50-ton slabs into place, their remains later buried in secret. But before you start picturing some prehistoric Game of Thrones with giants striding across Salisbury Plain, let's separate fact from fiction. Real archaeology tells a different story. Every authenticated skeleton found at or near Stonehenge falls squarely within normal human dimensions. Take the Amesbury Archer, one of the most complete skeletons discovered nearby. His bones indicate he stood around 5 feet 7 inches tall, typical for the Bronze Age. Even the so-called giant femur that made rounds on social media, forensic analysis revealed it wasn't human at all, but likely from a large prehistoric mammal like a woolly rhinoceros, its fossilized bones misidentified by overeager amateur diggers. Side-by-side comparisons of hoax versus real photos expose the tricks. Many viral giant skeleton images are digital composites, bad Photoshop jobs blending normal excavation shots with scaled-up bones. Others repurpose legitimate finds from other cultures, like the elongated skulls of Peruvian nobles, whose heads were artificially reshaped in infancy as a status symbol. Some hoaxes even reuse props from old Hollywood films, like the infamous Cardiff Giant of 1869, a 10-foot-tall stone statue touted as a petrified giant until exposed as a carnival attraction. But why does this myth persist? Partly because it taps into something primal, the idea that the past was grander, stranger, more epic than our world. Every culture has its giant lore, from the biblical Nephilim to the Greek Titans. Even early Stonehenge excavators weren't immune. When 17th-century antiquarian John Aubrey found unusually large animal bones near the site, he speculated they belonged to a race of human giants, not realizing they were Ice Age megafauna. The truth is, the real builders of Stonehenge didn't need to be giants. Their ingenuity was colossal enough. Moving those stones required not superhuman strength, but sophisticated engineering, wooden sledges greased with animal fat, precisely carved mortise and tenon joints, and coordinated teamwork. The monument's true marvel isn't hidden in tall tales, but in the ordinary hands that achieved the extraordinary. So next time you see those giant skeleton headlines, remember, the real magic lies in what humans just like us accomplished 4,000 years ago, one backbreaking stone at a time. For all its mystery and solemnity, Stonehenge might have been the ultimate Neolithic party venue, a place where the solstice wasn't just observed, but celebrated with feasts so massive they'd put modern festivals to shame. The evidence, a staggering 9,000 pig bones excavated near Durrington Walls, just 2 miles from the stone circle, their cracked and charred remains telling a story of colossal barbecues that fed thousands. Picture the scene: smoke curling into the twilight, makeshift spits turning over sizzling haunches of pork, and the air thick with the smell of roasting meat and fermented honey mead. This wasn't just a meal, it was a spectacle, a communal explosion of eating, drinking, and revelry timed to the turning of the seasons. The scale of these gatherings is hard to overstate. Analysis of the pig bones reveals something astonishing: many of the animals were slaughtered at just 9 months old, their tender meat a luxury reserved for special occasions. Chemical traces in the bones suggest they came from as far away as Scotland, driven hundreds of miles to the site in seasonal migrations that would have turned the surrounding plains into a buzzing prehistoric fairground. Imagine the noise: dogs barking, children weaving between makeshift tents, traders bartering flint tools and amber beads, all while teams of cooks worked around the clock to keep the feast going. But how did they cook for such crowds? Experimental archaeologists have recreated Neolithic barbecue pits using hot stones and covered trenches primitive ovens that could slow roast whole pigs for hours. Some bones show precise butcher marks, hinting at skilled chefs who knew exactly how to joint a carcass for maximum yield. Others bear gnaw marks from human teeth, suggesting a free-for-all atmosphere where guests tore into meat with their hands, juices running down their chins as drums pounded in the background. The absence of serving platters at the site only adds to the image. This was finger food on an epic scale, meant to be devoured under the open sky. The timing was no accident. These feasts coincided with the winter solstice, a time when the days were shortest, the nights longest, and the need for communal warmth most urgent. In a world without electric lights or central heating, gathering around fire and food wasn't just celebration. It was survival, a way to ward off the darkness, both literal and spiritual. Some researchers believe the pork itself held ritual significance. Pigs were symbols of fertility and abundance across ancient Europe, their sacrifice a gift to the gods to ensure the sun's return. Yet there's a twist to this party narrative. Among the pig bones, archaeologists found something unexpected: delicate bird bones from cranes and swans. These weren't hearty meal staples but rare delicacies, likely reserved for elites or ritual specialists. The contrast is striking, a feast where most gorged on pork, while a select few dined on dishes as refined as any modern gourmet spread. It paints Stonehenge's solstice as more than just a raucous block party. It was a layered social event where feasting reinforced hierarchies as much as it fostered unity. So next time you see those towering stones, try to hear beneath the silence the clatter of wooden plates, the laughter of children chasing each other through the crowds, the rhythmic thud of dancers' feet shaking the earth, all the vibrant, messy humanity that once filled this now quiet landscape. Because Stonehenge wasn't just a temple to the heavens, it was a stage for the living, a place where the shortest day of the year became the brightest, warmed by fire, food, and the sheer joy of being together under the turning sky. Every culture has its legends of impossible feats, and Stonehenge is no exception. One of the most persistent myths claims ancient builders floated 50-ton stones into place using levitation or anti-gravity technology, guided by chanting priests or otherworldly forces. The image is undeniably cinematic. Massive sarcens hovering above the grass like toys in zero gravity, drifting into alignment as druids hum secret frequencies. But let's pull back the curtain on this tantalizing idea and ask, could there be any truth to it, or does reality hold an even more fascinating answer? Modern experiments have put these myths to the test with refreshingly grounded science. Teams of archaeologists and engineers have recreated Neolithic techniques using nothing but ropes, wooden sledges, and elbow grease. One particularly convincing demonstration involved moving a full-scale replica sarsen stone, weighing in at 25 tons across rough terrain using a sledge mounted on lubricated wooden rollers. Volunteers pulled with coordinated tugs, showing how rhythm and teamwork could make the impossible feel effortless. The key, grease made from animal fat, reduced friction by up to 60%, letting the stone glide almost as smoothly as if it were hovering. But the real showstopper came when researchers tested a technique inspired by Inuit traditions, rocking the stone back and forth on alternating wooden levers, a method nicknamed stone rowing. This approach allowed a small crew to walk a multi-ton slab forward inch by inch, mimicking the motion of a boat gliding through water. Footage of these experiments looks like something out of a behind-the-scenes documentary: sweat, laughter, and the occasional stumble, proving that human ingenuity doesn't need magic to move mountains. Yet the levitation myth persists for a reason. Ancient texts from cultures worldwide describe similar feats, from Tibetan monks allegedly using trumpets and drums to lift boulders to Egyptian legends of stones sliding into place under the command of priests. These stories likely stem from a blend of misunderstood engineering and oral exaggeration. Imagine witnessing a team of builders coordinating the movement of a massive stone, their chants keeping rhythm, their tools hidden beneath the structure, and later describing it as the rocks moved by song. What was really a sophisticated construction method could easily become legend over centuries of retelling. So while anti-gravity makes for a thrilling headline, the truth is no less impressive. Stonehenge's builders mastered physics long before Newton penned his laws. They turned logs into rollers, fat into lubricant, and teamwork into a human-powered crane. The real magic wasn't defying gravity, it was harnessing it one back-breaking tug at a time. And honestly, that's a feat worthy of legend all on its own. Beneath the shadow of Stonehenge's towering stones, whispers of another world linger, one where the boundary between the living and the dead grows thin. Local folklore pulses with tales of fairy rings springing up overnight near the monument, their perfect circles said to mark doorways to the underworld. Step inside one, legend warns, and you might not step back out, at least not as yourself. These eerie stories intertwine with archaeological discoveries at nearby Durrington Walls, where excavations revealed a sprawling settlement dubbed the Land of the Dead. Here, the remains of butchered animals and shattered pottery suggest feasts for the departed, as if the living gathered to send offerings or messages into the realm beyond. Picture the scene, a mist-cloaked night, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and burning herbs. Hooded figures move in procession along the avenue, their torches flickering against the stones. At the center of the circle, a shallow pit yawns open, its edges lined with chalk and animal bones. This wasn't just ceremony, it was an attempted conversation. Some researchers believe the monument's alignment with the winter solstice sunset wasn't just about marking time, but about exploiting a celestial moment when the veil between worlds lifted. The setting sun's rays slicing through the trilithons might have been seen as a bridge or a summons. The link to Durrington Walls deepens the mystery. Just 2 miles northeast of Stonehenge, this massive henge enclosure was once a vibrant hub of the living, its houses packed tight along processional routes. But the archaeology tells a dual story. While Durrington thrived with life, Stonehenge was a realm of the dead. The bones found here show deliberate placement, skulls facing east, limbs arranged in postures of rest or readiness. Even the layout mirrors the underworld myths of the time, a river separating the two sites, echoing the ancient belief that souls crossed water to reach the afterlife. Modern experiments add a spine-tingling dimension. On foggy mornings when mist drapes the stones like a shroud, the acoustics of the circle warp strangely. Sounds seem to come from nowhere, a distant drumbeat, a whisper just beyond hearing. Audio engineers attribute this to the stone's unique sound reflecting properties, but to the ancients, it might have been proof the dead were listening. Reconstructions of Neolithic rituals lean into this atmosphere, with actors chanting in reconstructed Proto-Celtic, their voices bouncing between the stones until it's impossible to tell if the echoes are human or something else. Yet not all scholars embrace the supernatural angle. Skeptics point to practical explanations. The fairy rings are likely natural fungal growths, and Durrington's Land of the Dead label might reflect modern projection rather than ancient intent. But even the most hardened realist can't dismiss the emotional power of these ideas. Whether portal or projection, Stonehenge's enduring allure lies in its ability to make us feel, if only for a moment, that the past isn't truly gone. It's just waiting, silent and unseen, beneath our feet. Beneath the tranquil surface of Neolithic Britain lies a darker possibility, that Stonehenge wasn't just a temple or celestial clock, but a war memorial, raised to honor the dead of a cataclysmic battle lost to time. The theory gains traction when you examine sites like Ridgeway Hill in Dorset, where archaeologists uncovered a mass grave of 54 headless Vikings from the 10th century, proof that even in later eras, sacred landscapes doubled as monuments to violence. Could Stonehenge's origins be similarly tied to bloodshed? The evidence is fragmentary but provocative. Near the monument, excavations revealed a cluster of human remains bearing traumatic injuries, skulls fractured by blunt force, ribs notched by arrow strikes, and one skeleton with a flint projectile still embedded in its spine. These aren't the quiet burials of revered elders, but the hasty interments of those who died violently. Carbon dating places some of these bodies within Stonehenge's active period, their bones mixed with weapon fragments and charred wood, as if laid to rest amid the embers of conflict. Yet the narrative clashes with broader archaeological findings. Neolithic Britain shows little sign of large-scale warfare. Settlements lack defensive walls, and weapons like axes and daggers appear more ceremonial than martial. The famous Boscombe bowmen, buried near Stonehenge with their distinctive arrows, might have been hunters or ritual specialists rather than warriors. Even the so-called massacre sites like the one at Wayland Smithy, where 14 bodies were found piled together, could reflect disease outbreaks or ritual executions rather than battles. Here's where the debate sharpens. Proponents of the war memorial theory point to a curious pattern. Many of Stonehenge's cremated remains are adult males, their ashes placed in the Aubrey holes with fragments of weaponry. Isotope analysis hints that some weren't locals, suggesting they died far from home, perhaps as combatants in a regional conflict. The monument's alignment with the winter solstice sunset, a time symbolically linked to death in many cultures, might have doubled as a tribute to the fallen, their souls guided by the dying light. Opposing scholars counter with evidence of cooperation. The bluestones hauled from Wales required coordination across tribal boundaries, not conquest. The sheer scale of communal labor, thousands working together, paints a picture of shared purpose, not division. Even the violent injuries could stem from ritual combat or judicial killings rather than war. Perhaps the truth lies in the blending of both ideas. Stonehenge might have emerged from an era of tension where sporadic conflicts gave way to uneasy truces, and the monument became a place to mourn the costs of discord. Its stones could have stood as both warning and redemption, a plea to remember the dead so the living might choose peace. Whatever its origins, the monument's enduring power lies in this duality. It doesn't just mark where the sun rises, it remembers where blood was spilled, and whispers that even 4,000 years ago, humans sought meaning in the shadow of violence. Whether memorial or meeting ground, Stonehenge's silent stones still hold the echoes of choices made long ago, etched into the land like scars and sutures both. The fields surrounding Stonehenge ripple with more than just wind. They pulse with intricate patterns that seem to echo the monument's ancient geometry. Over the decades, crop circles have appeared with startling precision near the iconic stones, their swirling designs mirroring the layout of the Aubrey holes or the concentric rings of the monument itself. One particularly striking formation from 2001 aligned almost perfectly with Stonehenge's summer solstice axis, its outer circle matching the diameter of the Sarsen ring to within inches. Skeptics dismiss these creations as elaborate hoaxes, but the overlap raises an eerie question. Are modern crop artists unconsciously tapping into the same sacred geometry that guided Neolithic builders? Farmer Robert Davies, whose land borders the Stonehenge protected zone, has watched these patterns materialize firsthand. "You'll get folks showing up with planks and ropes at 3 in the morning, he says, shaking his head. They're artists, no doubt, but what gets me is how some designs look like they've been pulled straight from the stones. He recounts a formation from 2012 that replicated the monument station stone rectangle with uncanny accuracy, right down to the subtle offset of the corners. You'd need surveying equipment to get it that precise, Davies admits. Makes you wonder if they're studying old archaeological maps or just feeling it. Aerial overlays reveal even deeper connections. When researchers superimpose crop circle patterns onto laser scans of Stonehenge, the alignments grow impossible to ignore. One complex 7-fold design from 2008 mirrored the proportions of the bluestone horseshoe, while another's radiating spokes aligned with the monument's solstice sightlines. The most haunting parallel, a series of small, circular depressions in a 2019 crop formation that eerily echoed the Aubrey Hole's features not visible above ground and only rediscovered through modern archaeology. But here's the twist: physics offers a possible explanation. Some researchers propose that the same underground water channels that amplify seismic vibrations at Stonehenge might also affect crop growth. When natural electromagnetic fluctuations interact with the water-saturated chalk bedrock, they could theoretically create localized energy surges subtle enough to escape notice, yet potent enough to influence the way plants bend or discolor. It's a controversial idea, but one that bridges ancient and modern mysteries without invoking aliens or time travelers. Whether art, accident, or something stranger, these temporary earthworks continue an age-old tradition, using the land as a canvas for the inexplicable. Just as Neolithic builders rearranged tons of stone to reflect cosmic order, today's anonymous artists, hoaxers, or otherwise reshape wheat fields into geometric prayers. The medium changes, but the human urge to mark the earth with meaning remains. And perhaps that's the real connection, not in the lines themselves, but in the hands that keep drawing them century after century. Beneath the towering stones of Stonehenge, hidden in the earth itself, lies a record far older than the monument, a secret ledger of climate chaos that may have reshaped the world of its builders. While we marvel at the stones above, scientists have turned their attention downward, extracting slender cores of soil and sediment that tell a story of cataclysmic drought, famine, and adaptation. One particular layer, dated to around 4,200 years ago, reveals a dramatic shift, a band of cracked, parched earth that coincides with what climatologists call the 4.2 kiloyear event, a global megadrought that toppled civilizations from Egypt to Mesopotamia. Could this climate catastrophe have been the catalyst that transformed Stonehenge from a construction site into a sacred refuge? The evidence is etched into the land like scars. Pollen samples show a sudden shift from oak and hazel to tough, drought-resistant grasses, as if the very breath of the forest had been stolen. Deeper still, microscopic crystals called gypsum, formed when groundwater evaporates in extreme heat, cluster in thick bands, painting a picture of skies that refuse to rain for decades. Core samples taken near the Avon River reveal even darker clues, layers of charcoal from wildfires that raged unchecked, and above them, the brittle remains of crops that never ripened. This wasn't just a bad season, it was an ecological reckoning. Then there's the human cost. Burials from this period show a spike in malnutrition, children's bones stunted by hunger, adult skeletons bearing the telltale ridges of episodic starvation. Yet amidst this devastation, Stonehenge's bluestones gleam with eerie significance. Geochemical analysis reveals these stones were transported during the worst of the drought, their journey coinciding with the collapse of nearby settlements. Were they a desperate plea to the gods, a last-ditch effort to restore balance to a broken world? Some researchers think so, pointing to the bluestones' association with water, their crystalline structure resonating with underground springs, their placement mirroring the path of vanished rivers. Climate models add chilling precision to the story. By simulating ancient weather patterns, scientists have reconstructed the drought's fingerprint, a blistering high-pressure system parked over Britain for generations, deflecting rain clouds like a shield. Tree rings from preserved bog oaks tell the same tale, narrow, desperate growth lines squeezed between years of plenty. The numbers are staggering. Rainfall may have dropped by 40%, temperatures spiking 5 degrees above normal. In a world without irrigation or grain stores, such shifts weren't just inconvenient, they were apocalyptic. Yet Stonehenge endured. While other monuments were abandoned, its builders doubled down, raising the mighty Sarsens during the drought's peak. This paradox construction amidst collapse hints at a profound cultural shift. Perhaps the stones became a rallying point, a symbol of unity in the face of chaos. Or maybe, as the land withered, the monument morphed into a kind of Neolithic seed bank, a repository of knowledge and hope passed down through generations who refused to let their world vanish. The final clue lies in the soil itself. At the exact layer marking the drought's end, a thin, dark line of organic matter appears, a whisper of returning life. Mixed within it are flecks of bluestone dust, as if the monument itself had begun to weather, its particles seeding the rebirth of the land. Science can't yet say if this was deliberate, a ritual scattering to bless the renewed earth, or simply the slow erosion of time. But standing there today, watching the solstice sun climb over stones that witnessed both collapse and resilience, one thing is clear: Stonehenge isn't just a monument to the sky. It's a testament to humanity's oldest lesson that even when the climate turns against us, we build, we adapt, and somehow, against all odds, we endure. From celestial calculators to healing sanctuaries, from cosmic portals to Neolithic trade hubs, Stonehenge has worn more theories than the centuries have worn its stones. We've wandered through visions of alien architects directing awestruck builders, and explored how Bronze Age engineers might have harnessed seismic vibrations as an early warning system. We've debated whether those towering sarcens were raised by chanting priests or pragmatic farmers, and whether the bluestones sang to the living or soothed the dead. So where does the truth lie? Somewhere between the wildest speculation and the most grounded archaeology, perhaps. Take your pick. Did Neolithic surveyors map the heavens with nothing but patience and keen eyesight, or did they receive celestial blueprints from star visitors? Was the monument a grand marketplace buzzing with traders from across Europe, or a solemn gateway where ancestors crossed into the underworld? The beauty of Stonehenge is that it refuses to surrender a single answer. Every excavation peels back another layer, only to reveal fresh questions etched beneath. Now it's your turn. Cast your vote. Were the builders inspired by gods, aliens, or their own extraordinary ingenuity? Drop your theory in the comments, and let's see which explanation stands tallest, like the last unbroken trilithon against the sky. As our drone lifts away, the stones shrink to a faint circle against the earth, then vanish into the starry dark. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to keep us reaching, wondering, and returning, always returning, to stand once more in the shadow of the impossible.